Human resources, human capital, people, and culture. This single vocation has many names. HR professionals are responsible for what is arguably the most critical success factor within any organization. It's talent. HR Studio Podcast brings you bi-weekly interviews with HR executives, thought leaders, authors, speakers, and trend spotters from the world of HR and beyond. Listen, learn, and leverage. Welcome to HR Studio Podcast, building the next generation of HR leaders. HR Studio is brought to you by A.J. O'Connor Associates, a trusted human capital consulting partner to emerging, mid-market, and world-class organizations. For over 35 years, AJO has built its reputation on experienced listening, exceptional quality, and caring partnerships, delivering services in 30 states and 20 countries. To learn more, visit us at ajoconnor.com and be sure to check out our top-ranked HR blog and sign up to receive email alerts while you're there.
So welcome, everyone, to HR Studio Podcast. I'm Fred Bunsa, and I'm happy to be here today as your host. I'm excited to have Mark Bowden with us today. Mark has been voted the #1 body language professional in the world for 2 years running. So if you're listening at home, please sit up straight in your car or in your office. Mark's the founder of a communication company called TruthPlane. His clients include business people, politicians, presidents of Fortune 500 companies, and even some prime ministers of the G7 nations. Very impressive. He has a highly acclaimed TEDx talk that's reached millions. And he's written a number of books on body language and human behavior, and the most recent of which is called Truth and Lies, What People Are Really Thinking. In case it's not clear yet, he's one of the world's foremost authorities on nonverbal communication. So we're thrilled to have him here today. Welcome to you, Mark.
Oh, very pleased to be here. Thanks for having me around.
Excellent. What I wanted to start off with, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the nonverbal, I had seen you write about, or read that you wrote about HR professionals, our core audience here, rising HR leaders. And you had said something about old world HR leaders versus new world HR leaders. Say a little more about how you see that evolution happening.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about HR leaders for quite a while, simply because, well, I work with a lot of them. For a start. Often it's an HR facility that might get me involved with training some of their people. I train a lot of leaders within HR as well. And also I work on the Schulich Masters in HR Leadership. So I meet a lot of people in that area. Here's what I think has changed around that. I think previously, HR was seen as, well, first of all, a barrier to anything that I as a leader wanted to do. You know, if I want to employ somebody, oh man, I got to go through HR and they're going to put up a whole bunch of barriers and processes and I won't get the person I wanted who's my kind of friend and we've been working together for ages, you know, outside of the organization. I just won't be able to get what I want. Yep. I think we've moved on from that. So that's good.
Hopefully, yes.
But then ultimately where we might be or have been in the last few years is HR as the order taker. I know what I want, and now HR has got themselves very well trained about being my servant and taking my order very, very well, which is great for me as the leader. I know what I want. I don't want any pushback on that, and HR's got itself very well sorted about being a very courteous and good servant, order taker to me. I think a lot of HR have managed to move themselves a little bit on from that as well into what HR should be at that top table, which is a really great trusted advisor. Somebody who isn't necessarily going to take your order. They're going to help you think better about how HR can actually help the business. A real part of that business, a top level thinker in that business. And I would say right now, certainly as a lot of businesses thinking of a more digital capability, an HR leader who might be able to help you transform into a digital business might well be, the sharpest end of the HR tool at the moment. So that's where I think we are, which means HR essentially has to deal with a great deal of ambiguity as digital business has to. So that's where I think we are. I don't know whether that fits your model at the moment.
Well, no, I just was interested in how you see that playing out. I mean, we see some of the same things you've been mentioning as well, is that there's more of an engagement with HR. As HR has become more efficient and more technologically oriented, the business is looking to them to help with more solutions. And it affirms your sense that there's kind of an old way of thinking about it and a new way of thinking about it. And more of our clients, more and more of our listeners are part of that solution in helping businesses think differently. Tell me a little bit about the Truth Plane, the organization you founded, and how does that fit into this, if it does or it doesn't, but speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Truth Plane is a communication training company that I founded, as well as one of the most important techniques that we train people in, which is how to use your body language on purpose in order to stand out, win trust, gain credibility. And I think what that means to any HR professional, leadership individual who's listening right now is, my guess is you've experienced yourself having to deliver new ideas, deliver change, talk about the ideas that you have for other leaders in the organization. And that means you're potentially at one of those top tables having to influence and persuade. Now, a lot of the time what happens is you think, okay, so I've got to influence and persuade. I better get my message really good, and I better get my business message really sorted out. That's entirely true. You must have that business message sorted out. But ultimately, it falls flat a little bit because it wasn't presented in the right environment of a calm, assertive, confident leader delivering this idea of change. And that's what we look at Truth Plane, which is what is the specific body language you can use that wins trust, gains credibility, actually even before you've opened your mouth. And the Truth Plane is one of the techniques that we train people in, including HR professionals, a technique of specifically where you have your hands in order to win trust and gain credibility, whoever you're talking with.
So what I hear you saying is you've got to have your message, and just like you'd think about what slides to use, what images to include, what words to say that will best resonate with the audience. This is another level of how am I literally going to show up, and how I physically will communicate this message is something that needs to be factored into influencing decision makers.
Well, absolutely, because you've got your message sorted out, but unless it's framed with the right behavior, they're going to create a message that fits that behavior anyway. So do you want them to be biased towards the positive or biased towards the negative around your message, regardless of what it is? Because the brain is, or certainly our instinctual brain that looks at body language and makes decisions about people, it's pretty binary. I either like you or don't like you, your risk or your reward, you're good or you're bad. And then we nuance your message and distort and delete it in order to fit the frame that we've created. And we mainly create that frame by the environment we see around somebody and the performance that they give, the non-verbal keys and clues that they trigger us with. So just as you said there, I'm suggesting that people choose their behavior just as accurately as they might choose the exact words that they're using. You can choose your behavior just as you choose your words, and just as you choose your words when you choose your behavior, you can get a very direct outcome out of that.
Interesting. So yeah, I think that makes sense. It's a easy way to grab the handle of the message. There is just like you think about the best words to use that will resonate with your audience, there's certain behaviors that you can exhibit or not exhibit that will help convince and influence your audience as well.
Exactly. Well, the alternative is you fall back on your patterns of behavior. And I have to say, there may be nothing wrong with that. Your patterns of behavior may well have got you into the position that you're in right now. Okay. And you may be looking around you and going, hey, it's okay, I'm doing pretty well. So great, carry on what you're doing, okay? It's going great for you. Here's what I find with the clients that we have. They hit a barrier at some point. At some point, as they raise themselves up that leadership ladder, they hit a point where they go, whatever it is I've been doing isn't attracting attention anymore with this crowd. It isn't standing out with them. It isn't resonating with them. And at that point, people go, is there something else that I should be doing that would get me the results that I want? Look, there's no bad behaviors. There's nothing that you've done wrong. There's just results that you wanted or didn't want. And if you choose your behavior just as you choose your words, you can get the results that you want more economically.
Okay. So give us some examples of some of the most egregious things you see that can be, even not so obvious, but detrimental nonetheless. And then what are some things that could be more on the proactive side that can take you from good to great?
Sure. So let me just talk about this. Our primitive brain, the brain that looks at body language, when insufficient data, always defaults to a negative. So, for example, if I start talking to you like this, okay, you start to get a different judgment about me and my judgments towards you. If I tell you, look, this project will be on time and it will be on budget, do you believe me or do you not believe me?
And so for those of you who are listening in your car right now, Mark's got his hand on almost his entire mouth, covering at least the right side of his face, and he's leaning on his elbow. It appears that you're being thoughtful, possibly, and that you might be hiding something as well, a little nervous. You might be a little bit nervous about your ability to deliver on that project.
Exactly. So you've created what we call theory of mind. You've got a theory about me, which is Mark is hiding something and is maybe a little bit nervous. Here's the reality. All I'm doing is leaning my chin on my hand to stop my neck working so hard, to keep my head up. And we tend to do this 20 minutes into a meeting. Anyway, we lean on the table and we lean our head on our hands. So it's something that is in a pattern of all of our behaviors. Yet when I give you that information, we will be on time and we will be on budget. Your primitive brain, your brainstem, your instinctual brain goes, hang on, I can't see half of his mouth. That's insufficient data. What's he thinking? What's he feeling? Well, how likely am I going to be able to predict that accurately? Because I can only see half of the data. So you start to default to negatives and go, I think Mark is holding back data from me. I think he's a little bit nervous. That's a theory that you've created. And the theory is a negative one, not a positive one. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with me leaning my head on my hands, and there's nothing wrong with you having a negative bias towards me if that's what I was looking for. But I tell you, in this meeting, that isn't what I was looking for. I was looking for you to be buoyant and to be optimistic when you heard those words, we're going to be on time, we're going to be on budget. So look, here's what I do instead when I communicate that message to you. What I'm going to do is make sure that you can see my open hands at navel height as I communicate this to you.
So Mark's gesturing from the waist outward right now on the screen if you're not watching at home, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got open palm gestures at exactly navel height, and I'm going to say to you now, look, this project is going to be on time and on budget, and you can trust me on that. Now, what's your perception of me and this project?
Well, you just physically look more open. And the fact that your hands are reinforcing your words feels confident, or it looks like you are more confident.
Right. Now what if I tell you, and I'm going to signal it here, okay? I'm going to signal it here. Look, I don't know if we're going to be on time and on budget with this project, but it will get done and you will be happy with the results. So what's your feeling about that? What came across there?
Honesty and confidence despite potential obstacles. It was Yeah, I don't know how to describe it, but it does look
Right. So I've given you bad news, essentially, but you're pretty optimistic about it. Now I'm going to go back to here and lean my head on my hands, and I'm going to tell you all the projects that I've ever done. We've always been on time, and we've always been on budget. So you can trust me, this project will be on time, and it will be on budget. Now, how do you feel about this?
You look a little smug, and you look like you have a little less passion to drive the project, that you're just too relaxed about this bad news.
Right, but I gave you good news. Did you see how you went there?
Yeah.
I gave you bad news. I said it will be on time, and it will be. I said the opposite of that last person. You've distorted and deleted that to make it bad news because it looks like bad news.
Yeah.
That's all. So notice how I'm, purposely in this case, influencing and persuading your perception of the message, and ultimately it's creating the message in your head. It's deciding what you think you heard me say, and that happens all the time. There's, for example, the person who is taking notes in the meeting and then feeds back the notes to everybody. And because they didn't look like they were listening, they're told that they got the notes wrong. That isn't what people said. Not because they weren't listening, because they looked like they weren't listening. And we have to create a world that fits our idea of who people are and what their performance is. Does this make sense?
Yeah. And Mark, how much of this is cultural? It seems like, we all have, reptile brains, so I'm sure part of this is just the human condition. Is part of it also cultural signals that we get accustomed to and we learn about?
Yeah, so this piece of insufficient data defaulting to a negative, that is across culture. Now, different cultures may cover up different areas more or less than others, but even within their covering, even within the extent that they might cover their nonverbal communication, if you end up covering any more than the norm, then you're in the situation of giving insufficient data, and there'll be more defaults to a negative. So the key here would be, whatever your cultural norm is, whatever your group norms are, present as much of yourself as you can within those norms.
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay. Excellent. Is there any other body language that you can offer that can project confidence?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got this open palm gesture at navel height piece. Now, what I want you to notice I'm doing, I'm going to bring it up a little bit higher now to what we call the passion plane, which is up at the chest area. But I want you to notice as I'm talking to you, the majority of the time, I'm trying to keep my hands symmetrical. The gestures that are happening are the same on the left and on the right, rather than what I'm going to do now, which is I'm going to do asymmetry, which means one part of my body will be doing something different from the other part of my body. And actually, I'm going to change the asymmetry on it quite a lot, which means it's shifting in height, and one hand may be doing something very, very different from the other. My guess is you're getting a little bit more confused about who I might be, what I might be doing, and how much you can trust me. Well, what's happening for you?
For those of you who are listening, Mark is talking. One hand is up in the air, gesturing kind of randomly. The other hand is down at his side, and then he's switching back and forth, one side gesturing, the other side not. And it's a bit distracting, and I found myself feeling a little agitated or something watching you. It was disconcerting.
Yeah, so it absolutely agitates your mind because this is so much more neural load for you to decode what's happening because it keeps on changing. And also there's some stuff that happens that the gestures don't stay there for long enough. Yeah. So it's very difficult for you to comprehend. Now I'm going to just go into symmetry at one horizontal height, and I want you to notice, have you become more confident about me and my message now simply because it's symmetrical?
Yes. Yeah, it just looks more calm and confident.
Yeah. So on the whole, we bias in terms of our confidence about somebody. We bias towards symmetry and away from asymmetry. Asymmetry can be very intriguing. So if you hold asymmetry for a little longer, then it can be intriguing for us because it's harder to comprehend. But if the asymmetry keeps on changing all the time, it's just too much for the mind to work with, and it decides, I'm just checking out of this. This is just too much for me. So, go for more symmetrical gestures when you're in those important meetings, and if you can, bias those symmetrical gestures towards your open palm gestures at navel height. Again, just as I'm doing now, plenty of open palm gestures at navel height.
Okay, so right in your midsection, hands largely palm up and gesturing towards the audience.
Absolutely, palm up and like you're holding something up and offering it out to the audience. That's very different from palm down. You'll notice as I start to do palm down, this is a suppression gesture. We don't know what I'm suppressing, but ultimately you're going to feel like I'm pushing down the ideas at the moment rather than holding up the ideas.
Fascinating. Okay. Let's in the few minutes we have left, let's talk a little bit about truth and lies. Can you give our audience a couple insights from your latest book and how they might be able to become more effective or enhance their leadership capabilities?
Yeah, absolutely. So audiences have been asking for a great deal for a book on reading body language from me. And so with the co-writer of this, Tracy Thompson, we put together Truth and Lies, What People Are Really Thinking, which is a book on reading body language. But I would say, more importantly, it's a book on critical thinking disguised as a book on reading body language. So absolutely, it has all the stuff that you want in terms of what might this signal mean, what might this mean, what could this be? But it really is, what could it be? What might it be? How do you critically think? How do you think better about reading body language and understanding other people? And to that end, we created this SCAN technique, which is an acronym. S for suspend your judgment. So when you see somebody and you make that instant judgment about them, you get that gut instinct, oh yeah, I know what's happening here, I know what they're thinking. You suspend that judgment, first of all. Then C, you look at the context. All body language is contextual. Change the context and the signal may mean something very, very different. And because you hadn't thought carefully enough about the context, you may well have got your reading very wrong, slightly wrong, extremely wrong, or close, But you've got to check out that context, first of all. So suspend your judgment so you can do better thinking. Look at the context. The A of SCAN is ask more questions. Ask what else. Get more data. One of the keys of thinking really better about most stuff is getting hold of more data to be intelligent with. So get more data, and then the N is make a new judgment. Find a new judgment. By the way, the new judgment can be your old judgment.
Okay.
You can, after the critical thinking process, you can go, no, I think I was absolutely right. I know what's going on here. My instinct was correct. So SCAN, suspend judgment, look at the context, ask for more data, make a new judgment.
And can you recommend a trigger to someone that would help them to remember to do this? Because it's happening so quickly. And I've read if you want to begin one new behavior, tag it or connect it to an old behavior. So what would be the trigger that could help someone remember to scan and not just stop at making a quick first impression judgment?
Yeah, really the trigger has to be that self-knowledge of saying, I judge people. If you walk around the planet, and you certainly walk around the work environment going, you know what, I think I'm not a very judgmental person. I don't judge people. You've already lied to yourself. Of course you do. Of course you do. How would you get on if you didn't instantly judge people? So part of the book, in the first chapter or so is helping you to accept that you make judgments. There is nothing wrong with that. It's a very human thing to do. Okay. You make judgments about people based on their behavior and their body language. And sometimes your judgments are absolutely accurate. Sometimes they're totally wrong, or anything in between. However, they always feel like they're very, very accurate. And that's our problem, is this feeling.
Than we are. Yeah.
Absolutely. This feeling of we are great readers of people because we remember the times we got it right and we go, wow, look, I got it right. I'm fantastic. The times when we get it very, very badly wrong, we tend to go, oh, God, I just don't know people anymore. We tend to go, I don't know anything anymore. And that lasts for around about 3 seconds. And then we go, no, hang on. I do know stuff. It must be them. They're broken. They're just an odd one. It can't have been me having a bad judgment. They must be just a total outlier. Yeah. And we forget all of the stuff in the center of the bell curve where we were kind of roughly inaccurate or roughly accurate, but really roughly. We weren't spot on and we weren't absolutely incorrect. We were kind of accurate enough. Okay, we want to nudge that bell curve up so that you're even more accurate more often. And the way you do that is to go, I'm going to walk into this meeting and I'm going to judge people. I'm going to judge people instantly. And then I've got to go, what am I going to do about that? When I get that feeling of, I know this person, I've got them, I know what's happening here, I must suspend my judgment. That, I think, is the first big step around this.
So just admit you're judging every moment of every day and don't try to convince yourself you're not. Just simply say, okay, I'm going to then my goal will be then to suspend the judgment, to hold it in abeyance until more data comes in to prove it or disprove it.
Absolutely. You've got it spot on. The first thing you do is make it a goal to suspend judgment. So what I would say to people about a technique around that is, how do you sit? How do you stand? How do you behave when you do suspend judgment? Because sometimes you do. You do go, I think I've got this person, but you know what? I'm going to have a little think again. It may not be just that. What do you start to do? How do you start to hold your body? How do you start to interact with that person when you're suspending judgment? Pick up a few of those cues that you use when you're suspending judgment and try and do them on purpose more. Suspending judgment is purposeful. That's why when people say, no, I'm naturally non-judgmental, they're lying. They're lying. No, you're naturally judgmental. Yeah, you use your neocortex on purpose to suspend judgment. Suspending judgment is a mission that your brain has to do. It's nothing that you fall naturally into.
All right. Well, I think we're going to need to leave it there. Mark, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for raising our own awareness about how we are judgmental, but it doesn't mean we have to stay there. And we can simply increase our awareness and look for more data, I think is what I'm hearing as a key takeaway. And if our audience wanted to get more information about you and your book, where can they go?
Yeah, so a couple of places are great. Go to truthandlies.ca, truthandlies.ca, and you'll find that book there. You can also sign up for free for some online training there as well that you might really enjoy.
Excellent.
Or go to truthplane.com, truthplane, truthplane.com, and you'll find lots of information around Truthplane and myself there.
Excellent. Well, thank you. We'll put those links into the show notes for those of you who are subscribers. For those of you who aren't subscribers, hrstudiopodcast.com is the place to go to sign up for those resources and a look back at all our other previous podcasts. Mark, thank you so much for the time today. We really appreciate it. I hope I'm sitting up straight and making good eye connection here.
Fred, you've done a great job. Great body language from you today. Thanks for that.
All right. Have a great day.
And you.
Thank Thank you for listening to HR Studio Podcast, building the next generation of HR leaders. To discover additional information from this week's episode and to catch up on all episodes, visit hrstudiopodcast.com. Subscribe to the HR Studio Podcast list while there and receive alerts and future updates.